Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over some tips using Visual Studio. So I'm going to launch Visual Studio. And one thing that when I launch Visual Studio, I can start to work on old projects that I was already working on. So it does show me that I was working on Program 3 recently, so I can open this solution. And if I was able to make a good solution, then I can continue to work on it. Now, if I did not get a successful solution, I will not be able to open it and work on it. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. So the second thing is I'm going to put some code into here that has some issues, and one by one go through these issues and give you some tips on how to deal with them. So the first thing is you can look at your code and you'll notice that, oh, there's some red lines here. But you might not be able to identify right away that this line is actually here because this function prototype is missing a semicolon. You might not be able to identify that right away, but you might, after some practice. But this semicolon that's missing right here on this function prototype is causing all of these red lines because the semicolon's missing here, it's completely messing up what's going on. So that's one thing I can fix right away. But the compiler will also, if I go to my errors here, let's build it, and I go check my errors here, by clicking on my errors, I usually can go to the first error. It will indicate, starting from the top down, where my first error occurs. And that's this red line. So I can fix that right away, and that might fix some of my errors. So let's build it again, and I had 11 errors, and now I have 9. So just fixing that one semicolon has fixed all those errors. Now when I have my error list here, I always like to start first by looking at my errors, which are the red X's, and then after look at my warnings. So I'm going to start with my errors. So my next error, if I click on it, it is saying redefinition different basic types. So this function right here is called the greeting function, and it's causing me right above it I also have this warning about the greeting, and it's very weird. There's something weird about my greeting function. And so if I see this, especially if there's an error about my greeting function, I should take a look at the function call definition, also take a look at the function call, and then also take a look at the function prototype. And look at that. My greeting, I spelled wrong in the prototype. So now if I build again, now that has gotten rid of a lot of errors because your function prototype, your function definition, and your function call must be exactly spelled the same. All right, so now let's click here. Okay, so now I have another error here, and the red squiggly line is here, and usually when the red squiggly line is here, the error is usually right above it. And that is because I have a semicolon here. And the semicolon only belongs on the function prototypes and the function calls. The function definition header should not have a semicolon. So now I will test again. Okay, so now I have some other weird errors. So let's look at this one. Now this is a linking error, and and this is another linking error, and it just looks like, oh my gosh, I have this problem linking. Well, happens to be a linking error because it cannot link with the function printf, because if you notice here, I spelled it wrong. I spelled it with a capital P. So you have to be very careful and make sure that printf and scanf are both spelled with lowercase p. And now that should get rid of my linking error. And now I don't have any more errors, but I do have a couple of warnings. So the first warning I'm going to look at, so scanf and printf actually both are not void return type functions. They actually return a value. So my compiler is warning me that scanf, that I'm not checking for the return value of scanf. Now, people have been using scanf forever without checking for the return. So what I want to do is I want to say ignore that warning. That warning is warning 6031. So I can go up here at the top of my code, and in addition to adding this, if I don't add this, then I'm going to get an error for every scanf. Just show you. See, so if I don't add this #define CRT no warnings, then scanf is actually going to give me an error, and then that causes my code not to not be able to compile. Now this, I can also put this, and I don't put the word warnings, it's the word warning, not plural, and I want to disable the warning called 6031. So I can tell, this is telling the compiler, ignore the return value, the scanf return value warning. So I just put this right here, #define pragma warning disable 6031. You don't have to put it there. If this is not there, the code will still compile. But I still get the warning every time when I have a scanf. So if I put it there, then I will also get rid of that warning. You know, you want to make sure that all the warnings that you have are useful, and a scanf warning is not a useful thing. So hopefully this helped you to understand how to take a look at the errors and warnings and look through your code to identify some of the problems. Now I also have a green squiggly line here, and that's just because I have function prototypes that are defined up here, and I have not defined the function definitions yet. But that green squiggly lines usually do not stop your code from compiling, but red squiggly lines do. Now if I have a function, for example, that has a double return type, when I go to put my function definition down here, remember to remove the semicolon and add the curly braces. This should now cause a warning. The reason it should cause a warning is because reload has a double return type, and this function isn't returning a double. So it won't stop my program from working, but see, it is reminding me that my reload function is not a void function, which does not need a return statement, but it is a double function, which means it needs a return statement in which it returns a double. So hopefully this will help you with some tips using Visual Studio. And if you ever have any questions, please send me an email. I'll be very happy to help you.